Good afternoon, and welcome to the Joy Show, the place where being your authentic self is celebrated. I see joy as an acronym, just one you. So, might as well be that. Well, I'm so excited to be here today, grateful for the fall session to be rolling along, and let us begin with our land acknowledgement. We're honored to be meeting on this land that many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island call home. We acknowledge and thank the original caretakers and knowledge keepers of this territory, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. We also give thanks to all other Indigenous peoples, recorded and unrecorded, who have shared responsibility for this territory. In honoring the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, which protects this territory, we accept our responsibility to peaceably share and care for the resources that surround us. We also acknowledge, as inhabitants of this land, that inequity and discrimination continue to affect our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. So we therefore strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. Recognizing our ultimate oneness and acknowledging our reality, past and present, we commit to moving forward in a spirit of mutual cooperation. We are one. Well, I am so excited. My guest today is Rev KC Taylor, who is the senior minister and co-founder of Spirit Uncensored, a spiritual playground that highlights the value of choice, faith, and gratitude. Oh, I love that. Currently, Spirit Uncensored events include Spirit and Spirits, which is a monthly spiritual discussion held at a queer dive bar in Oklahoma City. That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, I'll tell you, Rev KC has had many, many, many jobs, and we're going to talk about some of those here as we unwrap this remarkable journey that they have been on. Welcome, KC.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. So tell me a little bit about your road to ministry. That's the one that's interested me the most to start with.
I started the practitioner program simply because the person who I was dating at the time thought having a credentialed person to add to a spirituality app would be valuable. And the class had such a significant positive impact on my life that I just wanted more education. And ministerial is what not logically came after that. I had no intention of actually practicing and utilizing ministerial school, well, other than the lessons that I applied to my personal life. And when I completed it, centers around Southern California just started calling me and asking me to speak. And at that time, I had very little money. So for someone to say, "Hey, will you drive here and we'll give you $200 for an inspirational message?" I was all for that. And so just more and more places were calling, and I was found success in Hollywood, which is what drove me to these classes. This was the kind of results I was looking for, was success in Hollywood. So I was getting that success while at the same time getting this other area of success that I wasn't even looking for. And because of my visibility in Hollywood, people were saying, "Well, what's this minister thing you're doing?" And so I created a monthly space just to address that. "What's this minister thing you're doing?" People are like, "Tell me how you got to where you're going and tell me about what you believe and what you teach." So it was, okay, I can do this once a month. I can go to one place once a month and share this with you. And the very first event that we had, there were 65 people that showed up, a full band, teenagers asking us to go to camp, to take them to camp. And I thought, I wasn't trying to start a church. Like, I was just trying to answer the questions of, what do we teach? What do we believe? And so finding myself an accidental senior minister, I've just been rolling with it ever since. And it's working for me. So far, so good.
I love that. An accidental senior minister. I think that is the best way to fall into ministry because at that point, you know, when doors are flying open, that this is a calling not something that you thought up in your head going, oh, this will be something to do for a minute.
For sure. I was clear that I didn't want to do it. When I looked at what senior ministers do and the expectations of them from the community, like I think about how a senior minister is expected to be a good speaker, a good writer, a good group leader, and to apply the principles that we teach to our personal lives, and also like a good business person. Where how
Yeah.
like who is an individual who meets all of this criteria? So I think we're in the direction of there being more co-ministry and a new. I think that's part of my personal intent around Spirit Uncensored is really redefining what spiritual spaces look like and getting away from the this one person is the representation. But what they are is they bring whatever gifts they bring to the situation, and then there's a team of other people involved so that it doesn't all lie on one person's shoulders. That's my goal.
Yeah, and I think that's a really exciting one. I heard of somebody, and I don't know who it was. Somebody was talking about each month they have a speaker come in from another religion. And I love that. Do you know who that was that said that? I can't remember, but I thought what a great idea to introduce, other concepts that people can then go, oh, here's what I believe, here's what somebody else believes. And we don't have to disagree and we
For
don't have
sure.
to agree. We can just go, wow, that's what you believe. How interesting is that?
In 2020, I believe Spirit Uncensored did a couple of interfaith roundtables. One was for African American History Month, and the other one was for Hispanic Heritage Month. And we had faith leaders, African American faith leaders in February, Hispanic American faith leaders in September, October. And what was so beautiful about that is, I have Spirit Uncensored has no budget for anything ever. That's what happens when you create a ministry accidentally. And so, these were people who are willing to show up on Zoom and lend their perspective. And having people from all of these faiths and having this one experience of their racial identity in common, we really got an opportunity to see how, like, both of those interfaith roundtables really highlighted and demonstrated the similarities of religions across these organizations.
Well, it's interesting because when you take a look at some of the beliefs, one of them is that there is only one thing. That's when it always surprises me when somebody teaches that there's like God and the devil. That's two, but there's only one.
Right. And well, it's this whole thing of, Christianity teaches of the omnipresent nature of God. So it's interesting to me that regardless of the fact that God is identified as I am that I am, there is all in the teaching, the actual practice of it just ends
Yeah.
up being a different story.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and it's interesting, looking at different faiths and different faith leaders. I was part of an interfaith group that did a World AIDS Day event last year, and what was fascinating to me was, the Hindu, the Sikh, the New Thought, the Christian, the Jewish, whoever it was, the messages were all identical that we're all one, that we need to work together in order to achieve peace and harmony. It begins with us. It was like every single message was exactly the same, and I'm like, that's the best news ever.
For sure.
Like that really that just lit me up. I thought that's phenomenal to know that. And I think that's something that, when we bring different groups into our own centers, I think that can help to take down barriers and this idea that we're better than somebody else.
Absolutely.
Nice. So tell me about your dreams for your ministry. Like, what is it that you hope to accomplish as a
That is
minister?
the best question ever. And it's not something that I share very often. But it's definitely starting to manifest itself. And, a big part of why I didn't share it is because there were a number of different people and voices and opinions involved. So I just was kind of sitting back and letting things be what they were. And they kind of they're starting to go in this direction.
Yeah.
In my minister panel, when I had no clear idea of what I wanted to do with ministry, I answered the question of what are you doing with starting a young adult ministry, or I said I wanted to be a young adult minister,
Yeah.
and that statement, regardless of the fact that it didn't necessarily feel true to me in the moment, had power. And so this is how Spirit Uncensored itself was born. And Next Gen is an annual retreat. There's never been an official organization behind Next Gen at all whatsoever. And I am somebody who is actively advocating on behalf of younger adults in the Centers for Spiritual Living movement, namely because I was one of those 35-year-old ministers who felt like young adults shouldn't feel like my only option. At 35, it seemed reasonable that being there, that a path to senior ministry would feel viable. And the fact that it didn't, to me, was a very glaring necessity of our movement to truly operate from a place of oneness. 35-year-old ministers should, I believe, should be comfortable and empowered to navigate the Centers for Spiritual Living as a senior minister. I am happy to report, though, that 7 years later, I believe that our organization is very different. That at the time that I emerged, and a lot of things have really kind of come together, and there's been an effort towards supporting younger adults in our movement more than ever before. But Next Gen was the place where I found my spiritual food in a way that I was not seeing anywhere else in the world. And Next Gen is that my attendance of that first retreat where people were using curse words in the middle of prayer, that was where I got the idea for Spirit Uncensored, was to create this uncensored spiritual space for people to be who they are, regardless of age, race, understanding of spirit, for it to be a safe place for people to be who they are, or a spiritual playground, as I like to call it. And so as I said, because it was such an accidental ministry, I didn't have like clear, tangible goals. But what I did know is the person who, one of the leaders of Next Gen, Reverend Audra Nicole, was someone that I wanted to be in charge of Spirit Uncensored. I wanted her to be senior minister because I wanted Spirit Uncensored to exist, but I didn't want to have to be the one to run it. I wanted someone who wanted to be a minister, actually wanted to be a minister, didn't just fall into it accidentally, to be the one on the ground actually doing the work. So Next Gen almost died in 2020. The leadership team was feeling like they were aging out, which they were, and there was really no one in place. And because of the pandemic, we didn't have an opportunity to really build and invest in that next generation of leaders. But
Yeah.
The Next Gen retreat is going to be in 2 weeks from now. It is the first retreat that has ever been sold out in its history. And this is the first time I've ever served on the leadership team. So I have this, my intent is for Next Gen, for Spirit Uncensored to serve as the permanent home for Next Gen. That when people think of young adult leaders in our movement, that Spirit Uncensored is what they think of, and that Spirit Uncensored serves as a place for emerging leaders to practice ministry. It was the place for me to practice ministry for the last 5 years. And Audra has recently stepped in as co-minister. It has not officially been announced yet. So my plan is for Audra and I to work closely together. She's been very supportive of Spirit Uncensored. She's literally texting me pictures of stickers that she designed and asked me to call her right after the Joy Show is over. Appreciate the shout out and the picture of Audra there. And so my goal, my dream is for Audra to run Spirit Uncensored, and for Spirit Uncensored to serve as the safe place for another emerging leader, and for it to be this revolving door of
Yep.
newer leaders to have the spiritual playground and and explore ministry for themselves while having the safety of an infrastructure of an existing organization to do that, and for next gen to continue to live on and have that safe place. One of the things that Audra and I are also working on is a wisdom council, so that as people are aging out of next gen, there is a place that they can go to add support for people who have never been in the next gen community but are advocates and interested in supporting next gen. It's that place for that to happen. So at Asilomar just this year, Audra got the idea while we were at Asilomar. We started having those conversations, and we've been collecting emails for that wisdom council so that next gen can continue, and it without the threat of a new generation aging out consistently.
Yeah, that's really important, planning for the future to make sure. I think that's what's so important about this next gen work, is that if we don't plan for the future, we won't have one,
Exactly.
because we got a lot of older people in our centers, and that, yeah, that's not going to do it. So what about the idea of inclusivity and equity? What are the things you're doing that ensure that that's sort of a base standard for Spirit Uncensored?
Well,
Uncensored?
it helps a lot that I've got a whole bunch of identities in one. And so just the nature of my identity of being queer, of being mixed race, has made it so that a variety of people are attracted to our movement. And also the fact that I've been a part of multiple centers for spiritual livings across the country that have been predominantly white and predominantly older. And so because of that, we have a really good mix of diverse representation. And I've tried to be proactive as opposed to reactive of the things that are happening in the world. As I mentioned, we did those interfaith roundtables really as a result of the conversations about race that were happening in the world at the time. You're showing this drag show fundraiser that that was really just, there was somebody in our family that is a drag show performer, was 17 and didn't have a place to perform. And so it was a win-win. We give the 17-year-old a platform and raise money for the spiritual center at the same time.
Nice, nice.
So what we do, I would say, like, this is really Spirit Uncensored with its nature being a spiritual playground, means that we are not telling someone that they need to have a certain amount of education. I don't have you have to take this many classes, or this class itself is required for you to engage in spiritual leadership. If you are somebody who is engaged in the community and showing up and demonstrating leadership, then that's all we need. The fact that you have the consciousness, that's what matters. So what we do is we support people who have the consciousness, are engaged and interested. And this event that we're looking at right now, New Thoughts on Gender Identity, one of our members who has been very active, 25-year-old transgender woman, Italian transgender woman in the community, that specifically said to me, I want to do a New Thoughts program, a monthly experience on specifically gender identity. And so she chose the facilitators. She designed this marketing piece that we're looking at. And so this is what being supportive of emerging leaders looks like, is saying, not restricting somebody based on how much education they have, but giving them a platform and a space to practice and play with spirituality.
Well, and I think that's very smart on your part, because everybody comes to the table with a different set of skills, and the level of wisdom they have in one area may have nothing to do with something else. I was looking at taking a doctorate program, a Master's of Divinity, at one of the, can't remember which spiritual center, and was told that I can't because I don't have my bachelor degree. And it's like, wow, where does consciousness play in when it comes to ministry? Because it should be the first thing, not whether or not I went to university to get a Bachelor of Arts or whatever, right?
Yeah, that one's tough, just because, like, that's what the credential organization decides. And so when you want the credibility of saying we are a real school and your master's degree means something, your doctorate means something, you have
Yeah.
to follow the guidelines that the credentialing body has decided. And that's just what the credentialing body is, how they operate.
Yeah, exactly. And I look at it and I go, I get it. I understand. And I know a lot of people who've become ministers or whatever who do not have the consciousness of ministry. And so it's like it just feels, that one feels like a weird one when it comes to ministry. I can see it in other fields. But ministry, that it just baffles me.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just a matter of credibility. Like
Yeah,
what gets to count as credible? Because there's so many places out here that will issue a master's degree without a bachelor's degree, but don't have that credentialing body.
yeah,
So those people, when they try and use their degree or apply it in some sort of way, there's just this backlash around credibility that comes
yeah.
into play.
And it goes to that whole colonial system. Here's what has
Absolutely,
value and here's what doesn't.
for sure.
Yeah. I remember talking to, I can't remember who I was talking to this morning about the, different refugees and stuff that have come into the country because we have
Hmm.
quite a few. And that, we'll have doctors and lawyers and accountants and all kinds of people come in who can't work in those fields because we don't recognize it.
Yeah. That, and
It's
even
like,
state to state, you can
yeah,
pass an exam and you get a license to do this in this state. And yes, I get that this other state has different laws or whatever it may be, but
same thing in
there's no
Canada.
reason that it's a whole nother set of classes or things associated with it.
Yeah, it's the same thing here.
Hmm.
Same thing here. Like I look at some of those rules and I go, the colonial system could use a fracture.
Absolutely.
I'm part of an organization that's strategically trying to accomplish that. Might take us
Beautiful.
a minute. I'll let you know when we get there.
Please do.
And also dealing with the racism, uh, anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, and misogyny. Like we're seeing a lot of that as well. So it's like changing the narrative
For sure.
completely. And of course, people don't like change. So,
It's the only constant in the world, right?
it's so interesting that the idea of change is such a tough one for the majority of people. Just like the meme you were talking about earlier. It's like, I want all this new stuff, but I don't want to change to get it. I just want it to happen magically.
That's, we were saying this offline, that's the comfortable way of living, right? Like what we
Yeah,
want things to be comfortable, we want things to be easy, and life has to push us out of our comfort zones, whether we want to be pushed out of it or not. To
yeah,
as you said, using a cosmic sledgehammer to disintegrate our comfort zone. But it's up to us to really identify how long to stay in which one, and to hear the sign that it's time to leave and trust it, to have faith in that.
yeah. Well, I think that's what I love about your story so much is that accidental minister, because there's something about following the natural flow of energy. And I think that that's the consciousness of ministry that actually works because there's no resistance. There's not a big agenda that I have to accomplish certain things at a certain time. There's more, I think there's more energy in that because I can be with it for the long haul. I'm not pushing against a wave of something else. So I love that idea of an accidental minister. When I came to Toronto, I came with $40 in a dream and a one-way plane ticket. It's like, you're either in or you're not, right? And I was in. It was like, okay, time to go to Toronto. All right, I'll do that. Let's see what happens once I get there. But it's interesting to watch things unfold without having to actually do anything.
For
What's it
sure.
gonna take for us to get that?
Hmm. I came to Oklahoma in a much more comfortable way, in a car filled with what I had left in the world,
Hmm.
and about 10K in the bank. So I had a nice little like cushion of, yes, it's a leap of faith, but this is as comfortable as a leap of faith as one can take, I think.
Well, you definitely had a little more going for you than I had when
With
I came here.
$40. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's it's fascinating how it all works out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of how I don't know what it was. It made me think about this, how I've noticed I've been in positions where I have no idea what, like, no experience in the thing that I'm doing at all whatsoever. I worked at a legal desk at a Hollywood agency and got no law background of any kind. Usually lawyers are in that job, but this person decided she didn't want a lawyer, and then just kind of taught me how to do the thing. And in Oklahoma, the first thing I ended up doing was as working as a case manager at a youth shelter. And beyond ministry, I've never worked in social services. And ministry as a nonprofit is a very different experience than really dedicating time and effort to supporting the community, when that's the thing that we're doing, is supporting people who are experiencing such extreme poverty where they don't have
Yeah.
shelter or access to food. And so, and also being young, that added piece of it. So
Yeah.
all of my teen camp kind of teen advisor support was helpful, and I found a lot of, like, I don't want to say like success, but my clients generally did well. Like my clients transit moved on, and as well as a case manager can take credit for. All of them aren't, living independently in their own apartments right now. Some of them were in different programs and, aren't necessarily better off than when we started. But all I can do is trust that I made a positive impact on that person in the time and the way that we work together. I did what I could to get them housing and keep them housed, but ultimately the choice is theirs. And but like,
Absolutely.
I'm saying all that to say that, like, I don't know anything about nonprofit administration or any. And so I ended up like in this other kind of role at the shelter. And I was like, wait a minute, you all need to remember I have no experience in this. I don't know anything about this. So you'll have to figure out, if you need me, if you're looking to me to do this. I'm probably not the one. I can help a kid, but I can't design a program or write the policy and procedures. I am not the one.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, and yet here you are doing what you're doing. I think sometimes we have innate abilities that maybe we're not clear about because of messaging we've received from media or the general public or family. I think there's some stuff that we don't realize about our own gifts and talents until we get put into a position where somebody says, here, try this.
I think it has a lot to do with what you said about being a credentialed society. Is there's this idea that you have to have taken all of these classes before you step foot into whatever this thing is. And I
Yeah.
think we found the reality is, so people will spend all of this time and money on an education, and then the moment they step into whatever field, they learn that none of that stuff was actually relevant or applicable to what's actually happening in that industry today, or with that organization, the way this organization does things. They might have been learning how it was done 5, 10 years ago, or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Lots of different reasons, or the academic perspective versus the thing that actually happens in reality. So it is definitely interesting that we require all of these credentials when they don't actually advance people in a lot of different ways. Like, my cousin is a hairdresser, and she was saying that they don't teach you how to do hair in beauty school, which, I mean, it's great that they explain the chemicals. You shouldn't be, putting all these chemicals in people's heads without understanding the consequences of all of that. But you think, if what you want to do is learn how to be, to cut people's hair, they would teach you how to cut hair. That's not what happens.
Well, and it's interesting that one of the things I loved about my CSL training was that I had to work for a number of years before I became ordained. It's like you get licensed and then prove that you can do it and you get ordained, where some other religions, you get ordination as soon as you complete the program. And so I appreciated that because for me, it's one thing to do the book studying, it's another thing to actually be in the field as a minister. It's very, very different. Well, we're going to take a commercial break because we're at our halfway point already and loving this conversation. You're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network. My wonderful, wonderful guest, Reverend KC Taylor, and we will be back in just a few minutes. Don't go away.
It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. Now do change.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back. And you're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network. And my guest today is the Reverend KC Taylor of Spirit Uncensored. And I just love the idea of having spirituality be a quality of living rather than a set of religious rules and regulations.
Yeah, I wanted to say, right, the last thing you said before the break about ordination being a 3-year journey. I didn't share this earlier. I don't know if you know this about me, but when I graduated ministerial school, there was a political is just the word I'm going to use. There were many, many reasons. So it all falls under that one word. as to how the ministerial program that I was in was not recognized by the Center for Spiritual Living. And the path for recognition took 5 full years. So I became affiliate. I was one of the first, there were 2 people out of my class that affiliated 5 years later. And so right now I'm on the path for affiliation. So those 5 years that I was speaking, that Spirit Uncensored was up and running, did not at all count. And so it will be 8 years of ministry before I'm even eligible for ordination, just based on credentials and everything that we've talked about. But one of the things that I think, speaks to spirituality and that cosmic sledgehammer, if you will, is that everything unfolds absolutely perfectly. That if I had been a CSL minister early on, I may not have gotten this far. That, having the freedom to explore spirituality on my own and to create spaces for myself that didn't exist, and the necessity of that, I think supported who I am and what I'm doing. I can't even say I think, I know it supported who I am and what I'm doing. So regardless of the fact that credentials may be in place in a way that does not support the doctor from India, even though it definitely should, that we have to trust that our journeys are unfolding perfectly no matter what, regardless of how these archaic systems are getting in the way of our individual and collective growth.
And we'll grow with it,
For sure.
or we'll grow it into a new way of being. Right? I think that's what I love about minds like yours, is that you're willing to work in the system by doing everything opposite to the system.
Well, what's great about that is, I got an opportunity when I did things in my own way and on my own terms, and affiliated at this time that I have all of this experience. So I get to just kind of walk in and do things my way. And there is a respect and credibility for my voice, that even though I don't have the ordination behind my name, the fact that I've been in these communities, that I've been doing this work and have demonstrated what it is that I can do, I'm being treated with an element of authority, so to speak, in the rooms and the spaces that I'm in. And I'm being invited into rooms and spaces that I'm grateful to be a part of.
And it's good that those of us who are older are doing that, that we're acknowledging and recognizing the wisdom that you bring and the essential elements that you're bringing to the conversation that we simply can't, because we don't have the understanding.
Some people feel that way, and it gets to be a debate that I don't have to engage in, that there are people who are vehemently opposed to the choices I make. Some people are like, church in a bar, that sounds amazing. Sounds fun, like you said. And other people who see it as straight up blasphemous. And that's the experience of spirituality, is something that feels holy to one person might be blasphemous to another.
Well, I think Jesus was blasphemous to a few people. So, you're in good company.
Right.
I think, that's the thing, is when you're on the growing edge, you're always going to be walking that fine line and accepting that what people think of you is none of your business. And if you can maintain that, you can maintain your level of sanity.
I mentioned that the Centers for Spiritual Living theme this month is playing with paradox, and the theme this week is getting comfortable with discomfort. And this week in particular, that whole concept has really rung true, of what you just said about the growing edge, of knowing that there's a flow, right? And there are moments when that joy feels like joy, and it's manifesting in all of its right and perfect ways, and that other times where it doesn't feel like joy, and we have to look for opportunities to lean into it. I started this concept of the best day ever movement that started with a talk that I heard. My minister teacher, James Mellon, gave a talk on expecting the best day ever? What would happen if you woke up every day expecting that it would be the best day ever? And the person that I was with at the time really took that on. And she would say, hey, do you know what day it is? And I was like, no. And I'm like checking my calendar, trying to figure out how I dropped the ball. And she would say, it's the best day ever.
Best day
For
ever.
that for like a full month. And so being reminded that it was the best day ever from somebody in my home, kind of tricking me in this way to like really live from this understanding, allowed me to focus on the parts of my life that were going right and going well. And the more of that energy of gratitude we lean into that, the more we get to experience the joy and blessings that come along with it. And as I've been practicing this for like 5-6 years now, it gets harder to do. It's not as if I've like, gotten joy down to science. It's that universe, my life unfolds in ways that pushes me to have to look harder to find joy. And sometimes I'm riding a wave of joy for so long, I forget how hard it is to have to look for it again. But Spirit always finds another opportunity to remind me to dig deeper and having gratitude for things that I take for granted, like a hot shower, like a roof over my head, like a working vehicle.
Well, I as you're talking about digging deeper, I love that song, Dig a Little Deeper from Princess and the Frog, Madame Odie.
I haven't watched that in a while. Now I almost turned on.
It's so good because, Madame Odie has just got this great voice and the lyrics of that and just the wisdom, the wisdom that character has, and nobody gets it, but it's like, it's absolutely stellar. That idea of digging deeper, I think, is what really allows us to take that very uncomfortable, comfort zone, and shift ourselves into a new paradigm where we begin to actually grow in a completely new direction because we're finally able to sort of take off the veils that have been blocking our light and our ability to just shine our own unique gifts and talents. I think that's the thing we're looking for, is where our and there's Madame Odie. We better be careful with that. That might be I don't know, Walt Disney or Pixar or somebody would be going, whoa, you can't play that.
See if they come for you.
Yeah, if they come, we only got kicked off of YouTube once, and that was for talking about COVID.
So. Interesting.
Yeah, it was like medical misinformation.
Oh,
Like YouTube said to us, you can't do that. So it's we did what we did, the joy of talking about whatever. So as you're now looking at moving into a senior minister role in an existing center, what are the things you're hoping as you apply for these places? Like, because there's probably going to be a little bit of, are you the right person for us? Like, are you going to wear blue jeans on the podium? Are you going to like let a curse word out? Like, so tell me about your interview process. Do you think, what's that going to be like?
Well, I've never actually. I think I was going to say I don't think I've ever cursed on the pulpit, but there's the book "You Are a Badass" by Jen Sincero, which I absolutely quoted, and that's just what the book is called. So like that just is what it is. I really more focus on like focusing on trying to like slip words into Science of Mind magazine articles and things of the like, and the global themes content, stuff that's getting more out there than trying to disrupt the community that I'm a part of. But my experience in Oklahoma City really is what gave me like both, I would say, the tangible experience and also the belief that this is something that I could do. I've taught a couple of classes, CSL classes, since I've been there, taught about 3. So like having taught 3 CSL classes, I feel like I've got that experience that I can bring. But United Life has been such a safe place. The fact that I host church in a bar, they were 100% supportive of it. The drag show, they were so supportive of that they asked for it to be an annual event, and we did more of them. And so, this community that I think I had assumptions about before I stepped in. But I was called, just like I felt like I was called to Oklahoma. I felt like I was called to, I heard Spirit tell me the my first day in Oklahoma City to walk into United Life and offer my services as the assistant minister. And they gave me a letter of call by that Sunday. We had that conversation on Tuesday, and I had a letter of call in hand and board core council approval in 5 days. So it was clear that Spirit called me here. And I feel like all of the support that I've received from the community has been a demonstration of that. So I trust that, I may land at a center that has a problem with my t-shirts and biker shorts on the stage, and we'll have a conversation about that. And I'm sure we'll have conversations about lots of things, but
and sometimes the conversations are going to go on behind your back.
But it would be a matter of whether this community feels like I am the image that they're looking for, or whether what I've got going on is too scary. You'll get an opportunity to know that straight from my application. My application has both I didn't know to sit and write how much experience that I've had over the course of the last 7 years. I just didn't, never seen it in print before. So it was really nice to kind of put all that together and have these things kind of keep popping up of, I need to add that. So I'm super experienced for somebody who's never been a senior minister of a traditional center before. And I feel like having 2 years in an assistant role, having an opportunity to witness someone else do it in the Bible Belt, I think has been really valuable for my education.
Oh, I agree completely. I think you're more than qualified.
Thank you.
More than qualified to do the job, for sure. I think it's interesting that the changes that are coming, the changes in languaging, the changes in what we see as spiritual. And I think, what I keep reminding my members about is you are spiritual. It's not something you get. It's not something you arrive at. It's not something that's going to happen to you. You are that. And the challenge you're faced with is being in this finite form as a spiritual being. Like, it's the human part that's the hard part. The spiritual, that's done. So
I don't know, because I think about this as I was saying about growing edges and discomfort. Discomfort's part of the process, and I guess that's I don't know. I think it's the spiritual part too. I think about, and I'm planning to talk about this on Sunday, is that what we are all on a hero's journey, and the hero's journey, the formula looks exactly the same. From individual to mythic stories, it's the same formula, and it's designed that way for a reason. That we have to overcome obstacles, whether it's in human, whatever form we're in. There's an experience of overcoming obstacles. It's just a matter of the fact that we're conscious of it, that I think, therefore I am. That makes it feel harder, versus an ant that can carry 200 times its weight, and it's probably not this piece of food is so heavy, they're an ant. They're used, that's just what they do, versus whether it was conscious of itself, it might be complaining about what the queen is doing and, all of those other things. So because we're conscious of the ways that we're creative, I think we have these ideas about what the universe should be doing. And I'm grateful for the fact that we don't get to be the ones that decide what the universe should be doing. But that journey of fully living from a place of faith, of facing an experience of discomfort or looking at an obstacle that feels insurmountable, and know that there is an unseen power that is always available to lift you up over that obstacle that is not insurmountable, because nothing is insurmountable.
Nothing is.
So to have to be reminded of that again and again and again, and for that to new experiences of faith to emerge, you know what I mean? It might start with something like trusting that you have the rent money versus like trusting that you can end world hunger. You know what I mean? Like, the more that we do apply these lessons in our own individual lives, the more we can do them for other organizations and really create a sizable shift. But it's so hard to do on an individual level. And I think there are so few examples of people who do it well that it just doesn't feel feasible or logical, when in reality, it's always happened and always will happen.
It's, you know, it's fascinating because I look at spiritual mind treatment work that we do, and there's a lot less talk about how healing it is and how transformative it is. When I first started, it was like that was the whole thing is, you know, do treatment to heal whatever circumstance you find yourself in. And what's interesting to me is I healed myself of spinal stenosis. A year and a half ago, I couldn't walk without a walker. And today I go to the gym and I do long walks and I do whatever I want. And I don't need a walker or a wheelchair. I'm perfectly fine. And it happened like that. It was
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I'd been treating about it. And then all of a sudden there was a click, that moment where, you know, it's done. That moment where it was like, yeah. And then there was no disagreement. There was no voice in there going, yeah, but you know it's incurable, or yeah, but the doctors, none of that. There was none of it. There was just a click going, of course. And 4 days later, it was completely gone. I could put my walker away and never use it again.
Amazing. My teacher had a story like that where he had stage 4 throat cancer.
That's right. I remember that.
James Mellon. And so I think I came in that center a few years after that happened. And when I say a few, it was probably no more than 5.
Right.
So that experience was fresh on his mind and fresh on the congregation's mind. But I think my personal opinion as to the reason that we've moved away from that is that there are certain things. I think that people feel like that perspective kind of diminishes other people's experiences of illness. And the other piece of it is that a lot of times, and this may have been the case in your prayer work, is that there's something to be known, some wisdom to be
absolutely
from it. And so when we speak of treatment as like, yes, it's definite and yes, it's healing, then there becomes this thing of, okay, I haven't been able to heal myself. What am I doing wrong? Instead of finding the wisdom in the experience and recognizing that because we are always exactly where we are meant to be, that this experience of illness that we have is what we are meant to have. That's not something anyone ever wants to say to anyone experiencing illness.
But it's true.
So it got really complicated. But I think that other end of it, like I personally, I'm grateful that I've never faced anything that has required any sort of significant healing. I never even had COVID, which I am so grateful for. So, yes. But for me, anytime I'm not feeling well, I want to see, like, I always keep trying. I've definitely made an effort to use treatment as a way for healing. But what has become my reality is I've recognized that anytime I get sick, that is my body's way of saying that I need rest. So I'm looking at those moments as teaching moments to notice when my body needs rest the first time, instead of overextending myself so that my body has to literally sit me down when I ignore it.
Well, and that's the key. One of the things I've found in the 25 years of ministry is that when you share with people healing, we have in our mind what we think that looks like.
Yes.
And we don't know.
Exactly.
Like, I remember my wake-up call was as a practitioner intern, and I had a gentleman come to me, 32 years old, carrying an oxygen tank. He had lung cancer. He was terminal. and he came to me for treatment. In my mind, he wanted the cancer gone. That was my first, before I even had a chat with him, I'm going, oh, okay, we're going to make this cancer go away. And he sat down with me and he said, I just want for this to be okay. And I'm like, okay, well, let me treat my mind first here because I'm on completely the wrong page. And for him, he died 2 weeks later. That was the healing.
For
The
sure.
healing was him letting go. Um, and the interesting thing is that we do, because we've decided what healing looks like, we've, in our infinite wisdom as these incredible human beings, our ego likes to go, here's how it is. And the truth is, we have no idea.
Exactly.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. Oh my goodness, the time has just flown today. We're down to our last 3.5 minutes. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
So, what one thing would you like people to know about you and your ministry or your vision for ministry that we haven't touched base on yet?
Gosh, that's really hard. My whole thing is, I was just reading this. I'm teaching a From Whence We Came class around the history of New Thoughts. And I really resonate with the fact that science of mind, religious science, has always been contemporary and it's always been led by spiritual rebels. I spoke about this at Asilomar, that we come from a history of people who defied expectations and norms beyond defining God for ourselves. And even debating whether it's a philosophy or a religion or whether it's really a science. And I think what I want people to know about me is that I embrace that within myself, and I encourage each one of us to do the same, to know that the fact that we live in a time where we can define spirit for ourselves without being jailed, without being locked away in a mental institution, but have the freedom to come together in community and explore what spirit means for ourselves and apply these lessons of faith and healing to our lives is a beautiful, joyful experience that I'm grateful to be a part of, and glad that each one of us who participate or are part of these communities get to experience that freedom as well. Because not everybody does in the world. There's still a lot of places where this is not legal.
It's true. Well, it's not legal to be gay. It's not legal to, be, well, there's a whole lot of things that we're not able to be, which are innate to us. So I think that's a great, I love the idea of us being spiritual rebels. I see that as well, right from when I started in the 90s to now. It's like, for certain, I've often thought of myself as the irreverent reverend. And I haven't been nearly as daring as you. So you're my hero. Because I want to be more, yeah, I want to be more daring. Well, I'm so grateful that you've been here. I love chatting with you, and I look forward to having more conversations and meeting you in person, maybe at the next convention. I don't know if I'll be at the next one or not. I'm going to Kenya, so we'll see what what comes between now and then, but all is well. And I'll just say to everybody, love is the answer. It doesn't really matter what the question is. And be you, because everybody else is taken. I love you, Rev KC. Thank you for being here. Deja, thank you for producing. And you're watching The Joy Show on the New Thought Media Network. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And send in a donation to New Thought Media. Keep us rocking and rolling. Bye, everybody. Bye, Casey.
Yeah.